it's very curious to look at the to see the subtleties and the change in the mainstream media, and to understand why these things happen. You know, the Occupy Wall Street movement, it ignited a whole sector of workers who felt that they had no place within a society. They didn't know where their futures were going to come from. Primarily, in most cases, white. But for the most part, oppressed masses, Black, Latino, and indigenous, were supportive, but supportive from the outside in a larger sense. And a lot of these oppressed people were mobilized in reaction to the murder of Trayvon Martin, who was killed on February 26th, and then the protest didn't start until almost a month after, because most people didn't know about it until almost a month after. And oppressed people in the society still generate the fear in the bourgeois class that they did many, many years ago, because it is the most revolutionary part of society of those who have the most to gain, those who suffer the most repression and oppression, those who suffer the worst in economic conditions. And as Martin Luther King said in Where Do We Go From Here, and the good things of life, he said Black people, with people of color, have half of that of whites, and the negative, we have our double share. It continues to be so to this day. And in this year, there have been 29 Black people murdered by cops and vigilantes in the US. Racist repression from the cops is a daily occurrence in our communities, whether it's stop and frisk or some other citywide ordinance or quality of life ordinance, which are really neighborhood ordinances that allow for the legal repression of people of color because of who they are and where they live. This is a daily occurrence. Hell, I just went to Reading to speak on the campus and was staying where I was told I was allowed to stay, and then 2 big security guards come in and ask what I was doing there, and I immediately began thinking, I'm going to get my ass kicked again. And fearing for my life. I mean, shit. You speak on campus and you think you're relatively safe because you're invited here to speak, and 2 big security guards come approaching you, and you fear the worst. Because we're trained that way by the society itself, to fear the very worst when we come into contact with cops. We don't think, great, here comes the cavalry. We think, oh shit, here comes the cavalry. So in the case of Trayvon Martin, you know, I was reading today about the people from NBC News who were fired because of the 911 tape. And there's been this very subtle thing of turning Zimmerman into the victim in this case. Right? There was the 911 tapes and the firing of those people. There was, you know, allowing his family, and, you know, there's Piers Morgan interview with Robert Zimmerman, his brother, who hadn't seen George Zimmerman in years and hadn't talked to him in years, but he's on Piers Morgan giving an interview and giving these soft, lowballed questions without even being questioned about the last time that he saw him and where he got his information from. There's the question about whether or not he was the one screaming in the tape, and there is the bringing up of the fact that Trayvon was suspended for 10 days. I mean, when I was in high school, I spent so much time in in-school suspension and out-of-school suspension, but that did not make me any worse than any other teenager. But they're justifying this because he had a baggie that had some marijuana residue in it, and they play this up, and they want to put these images of him on television and on the news channels and on the print media to make him look like someone who deserved to be killed. And what actually happened is lost. And so then the opinions of people begin to shift and begin to change. because it's lost what actually happened. And what happened is simple. A young black man was standing in an awning, under an awning, with a can of tea and Skittles, talking on the phone, and was wearing a hood, and that made him look suspicious. And because of that, he deserved to be followed and stalked and tracked by Zimmerman, who in turn then killed him. Simple. Even the stand your ground law does not justify what he did. The law itself, there has to be a reasonable threat. He tracked and stalked this young man and then murdered him, plain and simple. But that's lost now. That's lost. And so opinions have been shifted and changed by the mainstream media. This is what it does. And the reason why they've done it is because of the righteous anger that has arisen in response to this killing, and how it's going to go forward, and how at this particular period, when you have over 40% of black young men unemployed, and the general population of black people, official unemployment is at over 15%, and that's official. And when you look at the employment ratio, it's not even 60%. So 40%, actually I think it's around 56, 57, maybe 58%. So then you have over 40% of people who have no jobs of the black population. And these conditions are getting worse. The schools are crumbling. The infrastructure in the inner cities are crumbling. And now there's this national movement in response to racism. And so it's within the interest of the media, which serves the ruling class, to make this thing go away as best they can. And that's what they're doing, to justify this person getting away with murder, which it looks like is a very likelihood that that's going to happen, that he's going to get away with murdering this young boy.